Hello 163 Kin 163 students. This is Muscle Strength and Endurance chapter, which is chapter 4 in your FIR textbook, Fit and Well. So it's the fitness portion again. And as you can remember, this is the second and third components of health-related fitness. So we're going to cover those two in one chapter. Let's continue and see the outline. So the first thing I'm going to mention is how human movement happens and what organ systems play a role in creating human movement. And then part of this is muscular system. So we will look in detail into the structure of muscle tissue and its function. And then the part that I skipped for the energy chapter, or in the energy chapter, was the types of muscle fibers. So this is where we're going to cover it, and then types of muscle contractions, the FITT formula to develop muscle strength and endurance, and then we will cover the safety issues like we covered it for cardiorespiratory fitness. And then I'm going to talk about this interesting topic, DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness. And then we will talk about the benefits of resistance or strength training. I will use this term interchangeably, so don't be surprised if I use sometimes strength or weight training or resistance training. They're the same thing. Human movement, to create movement in human body, 3 organ systems play a role in this process. Okay, the first one is the nervous system, and this is the picture in black that represents the nervous system. The central is your brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nervous system is all the nerves that are going out to the body, the rest of the body. And then the second organ system that plays a role in creating human movement is the skeletal system, your bones on the right side in this picture. And the third one is your muscular system. Okay, if any of these 3 does not function, human movement will not occur. Okay, if your nervous system is out of order, then you won't be able to move. If the skeletal system, if one of your bones is broken, then you won't be able to walk or move your arms. And if your muscles are hurt or injured, again, movement will not occur. So the nervous system is composed of the brain, like we talked about, and the spinal cord and all the nerves, and it gives the command to the rest of the body to move through. Okay, move through electrical stimulus running down the nerves. And the skeletal system is the framework of the body, like the framework of a building, and the muscles that are attached to the bones. Okay, the muscles will attach to these bones and cross the joints. By crossing the joints, when they contract, they will pull on the tendon, which is the end portion of a muscle tissue. We will cover and look at it in detail, but it will pull on the tendon, attaching the muscle to the bone, and create movement. Okay, so muscles are the driving force of this whole system to create the movement by contracting and pulling on the tendon. So let's look at these parts of the muscular. In addition to the muscle tissue, muscular system, is tendon, which is a connective tissue. It's a rough or tough band of fibrous tissue that connect muscle to the bone, and transmits the force exerted by the muscle. If you look at this picture, you can see that there is a patellar tendon here, okay? Quadriceps tendon is what it's called. So the quadriceps muscle, when it attaches to your patella, the kneecap, it becomes a tendon and it's called quadriceps tendon, okay? So it's a connective tissue. When we talk about ligaments, they're connective tissue that connects bone to bone, okay? One bone to another bone, and also supports organs in place. And the cartilage is a tough, resilient tissue that acts as a cushion between, right here, as you can see, articular cartilage, between the bones in a joint. So connective tissues do not have a lot of blood supply. That's why they're not red in color. So the muscle's function is to create movement, but in addition to creating movement, muscles also act as stabilizers, like your postural muscles. So when you look at a certain contraction of a muscle and the bones that we talked about as the framework, as you can see, this is the basic example that we use, the biceps curl and the biceps muscle in your upper arm, and this is the humerus, the upper arm, and then this is the lower arm, radius and ulna. And the bicep muscle crosses the joint, elbow joint, and when it contracts, it pulls the tendon, okay, on the tendon, and pulls on the bone to create this movement. The second system or organ system is the skeletal system, and the functions of skeletal system, like you see, first it's a framework, okay? It supports weight and weight-bearing activities of the body. And then it protects the internal organs. If you look at this rib cage, there are very precious organs that are nested inside of the rib cage, like your heart, lungs, and it stores minerals. The bone tissue stores minerals, and the bone marrow here is an important part of your immune system, and also bones act as sites for muscle attachment. And then finally, we will look at the nervous system a little bit, but let's look at the muscular system first. Muscles make up more than 40% of your body mass. So they're important in terms of creating movement as well as other things. So strong, well-developed muscles help you perform the daily activities of a life with greater ease, and they will protect you from injury and enhance your well-being. We will talk about the strength training or resistance or weight training, like I mentioned, to improve your muscular strength and endurance in this chapter. But let's look at the muscle structure first. First, when you look at the big muscle tissue, again, the bicep being the example, the muscle consists of individual muscle cells, or they're also called muscle fibers. So this is the one that is in red, and that's what we're gonna focus on. So the muscle breaks down into fascicles or fasciculi, bundles of fibers, and then inside of the fascicles you can see one muscle fiber or one muscle cell, and inside the muscle cell we have the myofibrils, and inside the myofibrils we have the contractile tissues or proteins called myofilaments. Whenever you see a physiological organic substance starting with myo, you will understand that it is related to muscle. So myofibril is houses the myofilaments that are the proteins that create the contraction of the muscle, myosin and actin. Muscle fibers has their muscle cells, and they have many nuclei as opposed to other cells in the body. So muscle fibers will have multiple nuclei containing genes that control cell function and direct the production of enzymes and structural proteins required for muscle contraction. Okay, so muscle fiber types. Muscle fibers are classified first as slow and fast twitch, okay, according to their strength, speed of contraction, and energy source. When you look at the slow twitch or type 1 muscle fibers, they're relatively fatigue resistant, just like the oxidative energy system. So they go parallel with the oxidative energy system, as you can see in parentheses here. They're going to be red and fatigue resistant because their blood supply is high, but their contraction speed is relatively slow. They're not as fast, and they have lower capacity for tension. They're not as strong, but they are fatigue resistant. They can last for a long time in the contracted state, just like your postural muscles. They have to be contracted all day long to support your weight and keep you in a comfortable posture. Fast twitch fibers, they contract more rapidly. They're called type 2 fibers, and they contract more rapidly and forcefully than slow twitch, but fatigue more quickly. Okay, skeletal muscle fibers also vary in energy production. Type 1 and type 2A, actually, fibers primarily use oxidative. So type 2A, type 2 fibers are also classified within themselves into 3, type 2A, type 2X, and B. However, B in humans do not appear to have the gene expressing type 2B fibers, so we don't see type 2B fibers in a human body that much. So type 2A and type 2X. Type 2A is fast twitch oxidative, and the X is fast twitch oxidative glycolytic. So the names will give you the energy systems that they rely on. Okay, they rely on the glycolytic metabolism as opposed to slow twitch relying on the oxidative metabolism. Most muscles contain a mixture of both slow twitch and fast twitch, so don't think that one type of muscle like your biceps will be composed of only slow or only fast. There you will see a mixture, a proportional mixture of these two types in one muscle. Let's look at the pictures. This is coming from directly from a study, and the citation is down here in 2016. I love this picture. So the A represents human fiber types. As you can see, you can only see type 1, which is the darker ones because they're slow twitch and they have more blood supply, and the type 2A and the intermediate color, and then type 2X would be the lightest one. And this is human fiber types, connective tissue, including the connective tissue like we talked about, type 1, type 2A, and type 2X, as you can see. And here is the mouse. You can see type 2A, X, and 2B in the leg muscles, okay, lower leg muscles. And then the D is a zebrafish trunk muscle. So we really do not bump into 2Bs in human body that much. And this table summarizes their characteristics in terms of contraction time. As you can see, slow twitch fibers are slow, as the name implies. The fast twitch, type 2X is very fast. So we're just going to be focusing on X because that's the one that we see in human body. Motor neurons, we can skip that. Resistance to fatigue, I would like you to understand. Resistance to fatigue is very high in a slow twitch fiber, intermediate in type 2A, and low in type 2X. Aerobic, long-term anaerobic, and short-term anaerobic. And you can read the rest, but let's look at this picture. It summarizes it really well. Type 1 is going to be the endurance type of activities like long distance running, slow twitch, 400 meter, 800 meter, fast twitch, oxidative, type 2A. So from low to high contraction or speed of contraction, but the fatigue rate will also be low in here and then high for a short sprint. Okay, so fast twitch glycolytic 2B fibers, or 2X actually, in a human body. The neuromuscular system is comprised of individual motor units. Okay, so what you see in this picture is a motor unit. Okay, here, this is the muscle, and these are the fibers coming out of the muscle from one fascicle. And then this is your spinal cord, the nerve, one motor nerve. Motor means related to movement, not sensory, but motor, okay? Movement related nerves. So one motor nerve and all the innervated muscle fibers that nerve attaches to. This comprises your motor unit, okay? That's called a motor unit in the neuromuscular system. That's where the nervous system comes into play in creating movement, because this nerve is going to provide the muscle with the electrical activity so that the muscle can contract. So the electrical activity is like priming the pump. Okay, so the number of muscle fibers in a motor unit, okay, varies from 2 to hundreds. So you can see only 2 fibers in a motor unit, meaning one nerve attaching to only 2 fibers, or hundreds. So that depends on if the intensity required by that activity or contraction is small or large, and it's going to determine the size of the motor units. Small motor units contain slow twitch fibers, whereas large motor units contain fast twitch fibers. And the number of motor units recruited, that means when the nervous system calls for action in the form of contraction, it's going to recruit the motor units. And the number of motor units recruited depends on the amount of strength required. For example, when you pick up a small weight, you use fewer and smaller motor units than when picking up a large weight. So gross movements will require larger motor units. Strength training improves body's ability to recruit more motor units. So it is a good thing to recruit more motor units. When you train with weights, or when you do strength resistance training, it's going to improve the ability of the body to recruit more motor units. This is called muscle learning. And luckily, this improves before size improves in the body through strength training. So these are interesting slides. We're going to see what aging does to our muscular system. With aging, motor nerves become disconnected from muscle fibers. Okay, that's really interesting. So this is a motor neuron, or nervous system portion on this side from the central nervous system. And as you age, these motor nerves just disconnect from the muscle fibers that they used to attach to. Okay, by age 70, 15% of motor nerves no longer connected to muscle tissue. Just like you see in this picture here, you see this motor unit neuron attaching to many fibers, and then this one disappeared after aging, and then this one has to attach to many more fibers. So the motor units become larger when you age, because the abandoned fibers, these abandoned fibers, by losing this motor neuron, will be re-innervated by other motor nerves, making larger motor nerves, okay? Motor units, sorry. Osteoporosis is another one, bone loss, okay? It's very common in people over age 55, particularly postmenopausal women. That means after menopause, okay? Osteoporosis leads to fractures that can be life-threatening. Hormonal changes from aging account for much of the bone loss that occurs, but lack of bone mass due to inactivity and a poor diet are also contributing factors to osteoporosis. Strength training and any weight-bearing activity such as walking, running, dancing can lessen bone loss even if it is taken up later in life. If practiced regularly, strength training may even build bone mass in postmenopausal women and older men. So osteoporosis, larger motor units are part of our aging. And another part of aging is sarcopenia. By definition, it is the loss of muscle cells due to aging. As you can see from this picture, this is a healthy muscle mass. It's a cross-sectional of your bicep muscle right from here, taking from this upper portion. And when you turn it, flip it over and look at it, this is the bone in the middle. Then this red thing is a huge muscle, and then outside of it is the fatty tissue. And here, it's an aged body. You lose muscle cells due to aging, and the muscle becomes smaller, and that's called sarcopenia. Strength training, of course, will fight against this. We know that. Also, will help with the motor units by maintaining motor nerve connections and the quickness of muscles and prevent muscles from wasting. So the exercise and muscular system. The development of large muscle fibers is called hypertrophy. This is a healthy cell, okay? And as you go through hypertrophy, through training, you increase the cell size, not the number of cells, but the cell size. Muscles can also increase in size through a separate process called hyperplasia, like this. Instead of having, having 3 cells, you will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cells. This is called hyperplasia. The hyperplasia, muscle hyperplasia in humans is a very controversial theme. There are conflicting studies, and it is too early to arrive at a conclusion about this phenomenon. So I'm not going to say anything, but you should understand that hyperplasia is still being looked at through in human body through research. And then if you turn your attention to the right side of the slide, it's called atrophy or atrophy. It is the decrease in size of muscle fiber due to inactivity. We looked at it in the first or second chapter of this book through reversibility principle. When you start using the muscle, it's going to start losing its strength and its mass. And it's called atrophy or atrophy. Okay? Strength training, of course, helps build or maintain muscle mass and fight against atrophy. And again, here, as you can see, this is a healthy, normally active muscle tissue from the cross-sectional view. 2% connective tissue, 1% adipose tissue, and 96% myofibers, the muscle tissue. And then when you stop being active, it reduces down to 70% sedentary, atrophied muscle. We can also look at the benefits of strength training from this table directly coming from the textbook. The change happens through strength training, and then the benefits that come with it. The first box is the most important. Of course, the others are important, but increased muscle strength, body composition, higher rate of metabolism. We looked at this in the energy chapter. Improved capacity to regulate fuel use with aging, toned and healthy looking muscles, increased longevity and quality of life. And then you can read the rest, but I'm going to cover this in the last slide again. I would like you to pay attention to this little footnote here. Due to genetic and hormonal differences, men will build more muscle mass than women. But both men and women make about the same percentage gains in strength through a good program. So proportional wise, it's equal, but since men have more muscle mass, they're going to build more strength because they have more muscle mass. But when you do the calculation based on a muscle fiber, it's going to be equal. So let's talk about muscle strength versus muscle endurance. We talked about this on the very first chapter. Muscle strength is the maximal force through single contraction, one effort, maximal effort, and it is assessed by something called 1 repetition max, or 1 RM. You can measure this 1 RM directly, okay, by just trying it out like a bench press. What is my maximum amount of weight that I can lift? Well, only once. That's your maximal capacity. Or, to be on the safe side, because that's a dangerous or risky protocol, we can also estimate it by doing multiple repetitions, like you see in this picture. They did 6 with weight 67.5 pounds. And then we can just estimate it through some calculations. These are available online. You can see what that represents. So 6 reps would represent 80% of your 1 RM. And when you do a simple fraction, you will find what your 1 RM number for this specific exercise that they did. Maybe it's a bench press. Okay, so the endurance, however, as opposed to maximal force, this is not maximal. It's below your maximal. That's why it's called submaximal. It's a submaximal effort with many repetitions, or it's a sustained contraction. So many repetitions or sustaining a single submaximal contraction. Just like here, this is sustaining a single submaximal contraction of your core muscles through plank, holding the plank, or you can do sit-ups for many repetitions. This is the assessment. These are the field tests that are used for like timed, specific timed sit-ups, like 1 minute sit-up, 1 minute push-up, sit-up for your core strength, and then push-up for upper body, and plank would be a static or single submaximal contraction for time, and then you just measure how long you can hold or sustain that submaximal contraction, which is included in your extra credit assignment if you choose to do it. types of muscle contractions. So there are three types of muscle actions, actually, the way the muscle contracts. Okay, the first one is isometric, also called static. The second one is isotonic, dynamic, and the third one is isokinetic. Isometric, also called static exercise, causes a muscle contraction without changing the length of the muscle. So it's not the typical muscle contraction that you know, like the one you see in this picture, the video, but it's actually like a snapshot. It's like taking a picture. It's a static pose that you hold without changing the length of the muscle or the angle in the joint on which the muscle acts. These are called isometrics. The muscle contracts, but there is no movement. To perform an isometric exercise, a person can use an immovable object like a wall to provide resistance, or simply tighten a muscle while remaining still, like tightening the abdominal muscles while sitting at a desk. Or you can do a plank or a side plank like this one in the picture. So I want you to understand that no change in muscle length. That's why it's called isometric. Metric is length, iso equal length, and the resistance is greater than the force that is applied through the muscle contraction. Okay, this is very typical to be used in rehab exercises. And the isotonic is a dynamic exercise, and it causes a muscle contraction and a change in the length of the muscle and the angle of the joint, just like you see in this video, at the joint being the elbow joint and the muscle being the bicep muscle. Dynamic exercises are the most popular type for increasing muscle strength, and that's the one that you are used to. And seem to be the most valuable for developing strength that can be transferred to other forms of physical activity. They can be performed with weight machines, free weights, or a person's own body weight, like in a pull-up or a push-up. So let's look at the phases of the dynamic muscle contraction. The first one is a concentric phase. Muscle contraction occurs when the muscle applies enough force to overcome resistance and shortens as it contracts. So force that the muscle applies or exerts will be greater in the concentric phase, so that it overcomes the gravity. So the concentric phase would be when this lower arm pulls up toward the upper arm. In the eccentric muscle contraction, the resistance is greater than the force applied by the muscle, and the muscle lengthens as it contracts. So it's not a stretch of your bicep muscle when you lower your arm down. It is still contracting and using that ATP, but it lengthens. So when we're talking about muscle contractions, we don't necessarily mean muscle has to get short. Okay, muscle has to shorten. That's only the concentric phase of an isotonic contraction. So when you pull up, it depends on the exercise, but just know that the force is greater than the resistance, and you overcome the gravity and the muscle gets shorter. In the eccentric, when you lower this arm, with this given example, resistance is greater than the force that is applied by the muscle, and then it just resists gravity, but gravity overcomes your muscle because you have to lower your arm, and the muscle lengthens. The isokinetic contraction requires specialized machines like you see in this picture that maintain speed of contraction. So it's a constant speed but variable resistance. Resistance matches the effort applied by the individual after loading. So we're not going to be focusing on this. muscle action for the sake of this class. So let's look at the strength training equipment that is available, or the types of strength training methods. Many people prefer machines because they're safe, they're convenient, and easy to use. Not in this case where we are in a lockdown, we can't get to the weight machines. But if it was the case, if we were free to go to a gym, they're safe, convenient, and easy to use, and they make it easy to isolate and work specific muscles. You don't need a spotter. That means someone who stands by to assist when free weights are used, and you don't have to worry about dropping a weight on yourself. And mini machines provide support for the back. So if you are having issues with your back, the support will be provided by the machine. But on the other hand, since it is provided, it's not going to challenge your core muscles to be stronger. So weight machines will be very stable and will not challenge your core. Free weights require more care, balance, coordination to use than the machines, but they strengthen your body in ways that are more adaptable to real life. They are also more popular with athletes for developing functional strength for sports, and they will require a spotter. Free weights are widely available, inexpensive, and convenient for home use. So we can use free weights anywhere as long as we have the free weights. Exercises that use body weight, resistance bands, stones, medicine balls, or soup cans, like carrying exercises, enable you to do workouts at home, of course. A basic principle when we talk about resistance exercise is to train movements, not muscles. Okay, that's what we have to focus on, especially for sports, to develop strength through movements or dynamic moves instead of just focusing on muscles. So body weight resistance bands, medicine balls, suspension training like you see in this picture, or the brand name is TRX, but there are other brands. Stability balls that challenge your stability to improve core strength. Vibration training, Pilates to strengthen and stretch the core muscles. Power-based conditioning programs like plyometrics. You can use a box to jump up and down. And then the blood flow restriction resistance training, here you see in this picture, and that's one of the consumer product choices. A complete weight training program. So we will look at the FITT formula for strength training. A complete weight training program works all the major muscle groups. Frequency, intensity, time, and type are also valid for strength training. For general fitness, for frequency, American College of Sports Medicine recommends a frequency of at least 2 non-consecutive days per week, okay, for weight training. Why non-consecutive? Because you have to take a break so that the muscles will go through the adaptation to develop strength and mass before you can re-challenge them or overload them again. Okay, so you need to have at least 1 day of rest if you're going to use the same muscle group with your workout. But if you have to, or if you prefer to do it consecutively, like every single day, you have to alternate the muscle groups. Intensity of exercise is basically the amount of resistance, like how much you will lift. it determines, okay, the resistance determines how your body will adapt to weight training. And we'll look at individual fitness goals in another slide, where we have to vary our program based on the goal. To build strength rapidly, you should lift weights as heavy as 80% of your maximum. I'll show you that in a bit on a table. If you're more interested in building endurance, choose a lighter weight, perhaps like 40 to 60% on 1RM, and do more reps. The time of exercise for strength training translates into reps and sets. How many reps are you're going to do and how many sets of the same exercise. To improve fitness, you must perform enough repetitions to fatigue your muscles. Rest also acts as a variable and depends on the amount of the exercise. For overall fitness, you need to include exercises for your neck, upper back, shoulders from up to bottom. Think about all the body parts: arms, chest, abdomen, core, lower back, thighs, buttocks, and calves. About 8 to 10 exercises in all. So, type of exercise is a complete weight training program, works all the major muscle groups. It is important to balance exercise between antagonistic muscle groups. So this means the major muscle group that works, or its primary mover is another name of it, agonist. So when you do a bicep curl, your biceps will be the agonist muscle group, and antagonist would be your triceps. So it is important to balance those two muscle groups in one program, or prioritize them on different days, but just make sure to include them all in your workout program. Do exercise for large muscle groups such as the chest and shoulders before you do exercises that use small muscle groups such as the upper arm or upper and lower arms, because those are going to be used in the large muscle group exercises like the chest and shoulders. And if you do them in the beginning of the workout and tire them out, you won't be able to do the chest and shoulders afterwards. Then order exercises so that you work opposing muscle groups in sequence, one after the other. So like I said, biceps and triceps following each other. We have to focus on volume and progression when we talk about resistance training. These were not included in the cardiorespiratory fitness, but volume means the product of frequency, intensity, and time. So if you want to calculate the volume of exercise during a weight training workout, you have to multiply the number of reps and sets. Changing the training volume prevents the body from adapting to exercise stress and results in more consistent improvements in fitness. So volume is an important variable. Progression, like we talked about, is one of the exercise physiology principles. You have to progressively overload the body. This happens rapidly when training begins, but slows down when you become more fit. You have to set fitness goals and progress systematically by adding weight or sets as you gain strength and power. Let's look at that in detail. So we're going to begin by choosing a weight. You can easily move through 8 to 12 reps for only one set, and rest 1 to 2 minutes between exercises. Gradually add weight, and if you want sets to your program, over the first few weeks until you are doing 1 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps of each exercise. You can expect to improve rapidly during the first 6 to 10 weeks of training. Gains will then come more slowly. After you achieve the level of strength and muscularity you want, you can maintain your gains by training 2 to 3 days per week. Okay, so fit for specific fitness goals. This is what I want you to focus on in your extra credit assignment. And if you don't choose to do the extra credit assignment, in your own life, designing your strength training programs. So when you want to improve strength, these are the variables, okay? Acute variables of your workout program. Sets 3 to 6, reps 1 to 6, and this is the intensity, okay? So percent of your 1RM, 80 to 100, almost all out. Rest between the sets, 3 to 6 minutes. What does that represent? What do you remember from the energy system? We talked about that the phosphocreatine storage or stores are replenished in 3 to 5 minutes. So this is what you're allowing your body to go through between your sets. You have to replenish the phosphocreatine because you're trying to go for all out to improve strength. You need that first short and intense energy burst in the beginning of your lifts, okay? So 2 to 4 days a week. So instead of memorizing this for the test, you will already have access to this table. I would like you to recognize what is the main thing that is represented by the given goal. Like when I'm talking about strength, basically I'm talking about lifting heavy, okay? This is the main highlight of the program. When you look at endurance, it's enduring many reps. So you're going to be looking at a lot of reps, 10 to 15, even plus. 2 to 3 sets, 60 to 75% of your 1RM. Rest between the sets is not that much. Sometimes you can even totally eliminate that to improve cardiovascular fitness. 3 days a week. Fitness is 1 to 3 sets. This is for general muscular fitness. 8 to 12 reps. We talked about this, the ACSM guideline. 70 to 80% of your 1RM. 1 to 2 minutes between your sets of a rest, and 2 to 3 days. And for size or hypertrophy, the main highlight again here is the volume. Okay, so if you look at the sets, 4 to 10, reps 3 to 5, and the 1RM is not that light. As you can see, it's pretty heavy, but you're doing a lot of them. Okay, so the main thing related to hypertrophy is the volume. If you look at this one, this comes from your text. As you increase the number of reps, the gains that you get for strength, the orange, is going to be lower, okay? But if you increase the amount of resistance, the gains that you get for endurance will be lower. So it's just a spectrum of how you, what you want from your training actually. And you can also divide your goals based on your body parts. Like let's say you want to improve core endurance, but you want to improve strength for your upper body. So you can have different acute variables for different parts of the body. So for upper body exercises, you can follow this. And then for your core exercises, you can follow either endurance or fitness. I hope it makes sense. These are some sample programs that were provided by your textbook, and I like them, so you can take a look at them so that you have it as documentation for designing your own program. They're pretty balanced. Again, it depends on your own goal, your SMART goal. that you will formulate. But in terms of the FITT principle, you can take a look at this. This is a pretty balanced exercise. And then here is another one with the weight machines, mainly weight machines. And then let's talk about the safety and injury prevention topics. So warm up and cool down has to be there. We have to do a general or a specific warm up before we begin our strength training workout. So general warm up includes a dynamic stretching, or includes many dynamic stretching exercises and a brief cardio. Or you can do a specific warm up which will resemble what you're going to do with your workout. So with no or lighter weights of the same exercise that you're going to do. For cool down, we're going to relax for 5 to 10 minutes after exercising, and we have to perform static stretching. We have to save the static, remember, stretching for the cool down, not for the warm up. We have to use correct technique and full range of motion, and in a controlled manner. We have to breathe. We can't hold the breath because of the Valsalva maneuver that is caused by holding breath, resulting in decrease in blood flow back to the heart, and then it's going to briefly increase the blood pressure and can lead to dizziness and fainting. So we don't want to hold the breath, and we have to exhale when we exert or lift, and inhale when you lower the weight or reset. To improve, use progressive overload. We talked about that. And 2-for-2 rule, when you can do 2 additional reps on 2 consecutive training days, you have to increase resistance. And the general guide for increasing resistance is 5% weight increase or half a pound per 10 pounds lifted. For safety, use legs when you lift weights from the floor, not your back. Avoid twisting when lifting. Have a good posture. Use spotters. Use collars to fix the weight plates on the barbells if you're using a barbell for your compound exercises. Compound exercise means recruiting many joints instead of just isolating one. For example, a compound exercise would be a squat or a deadlift, and an isolation exercise would be a leg extension or a leg curl on a weight machine. So if you're doing a compound exercise using a barbell, you're going to end up using weight plates, and make sure to use collars to secure the weight plates in place. And be alert for injuries. Report any obvious muscle or joint injuries to your trainer or instructor or whomever is in charge, and stop exercising the affected area. Even minor injuries heal faster if you use the RICE principle of treating injuries, which is rest, ice, compression, and elevation. And consult a physician if you have any unusual symptoms during exercise. You gotta stop right away. And let's look at the supplements and drugs. A popular topic that has been, asked by many recreational athletes. So let's cover this. But the first sentence I'm going to throw out there is most substances are ineffective and many are dangerous. So a balanced diet is the best nutritional advice. But specifically, let's focus on creatine monohydrate. Creatine supplementation is among the most popular and widely used supplements, mainly taken by athletes to build strength and muscle mass, enhance recovery, and improve exercise capacity. Research shows that creatine supplementation improves performance in short-term, high-intensity, repetitive exercise, which might make it a valuable supplement for some physically active people, but the long-term safety or effectiveness of creatine monohydrate is currently unknown, and therefore it should be used with caution. And the second one, athletes may take amino acids and polypeptide supplements in an effort to promote muscle hypertrophy, decrease body fat, and stimulate growth hormone release. Little scientific proof exists to support a benefit to taking amino acid or polypeptide supplementation. Carbohydrate beverages, if they're consumed during or immediately following physical activity, they might help enhance recovery from intense training, speeding the replenishment of liver and muscle glycogen. So that's not really considered a supplement or a drug. It's a carbohydrate beverage supported or enhanced with some electrolytes. So research shows that it increases your recovery and liver and muscle glycogen store replenishment. Caffeine stimulates the central nervous system. It's a stimulant, and it releases, or it causes your body to release adrenaline or epinephrine, which is a driving force or driving hormone. However, it increases the risk of heart arrhythmias and insomnia, so it should be used with caution again. And anabolic steroids have many undesirable and dangerous side effects. I should not even mention it, but just to give you a heads up regarding the side effects, I just wanted to touch base and tell you about the bad side effects. First one is liver toxicity and tumors. You don't want to take that risk. Decreased HDL, which is your good cholesterol that protects you from the bad cholesterol, so it increases your the health of, or improves the health of your arteries, so it decreases HDL. Causes cardiac arrhythmia, causes reduced sperm count. It lowers testosterone production, natural production of your body, causes high blood pressure. It increases the risk of HIV infection from shared needles, depresses immune function, increases glucose intolerance, causes some physiological disturbances, masculinization in women and children, and it increases cancer risk. So because of all the side effects, when you compare the pros and cons, you should not take that risk into your life just because you want to get bigger. So no anabolic steroids. Let's look at delayed onset of muscle soreness, or DOMS. It's basically what you feel a day or two after a workout, heavy workout. It's an injury to muscle fibers, and it increases, or it causes inflammation due to the training or the overload that you created. It's caused by your workout, and it's a micro damage to your muscle fibers. But this is caused by the inflammation, the soreness, caused by the inflammation, and some proteins that are released to treat the inflammation so that the muscle rebuilds, and it's not caused by lactic acid. Let's clear the air about this misinformation that is out there. Everybody's talking about, oh, lactic acid is hurting me so bad, I just had a workout yesterday, but that's not true. Lactic acid, as we looked at it in the energy chapter, can be cleared out of your system in 1 or maximum 2 hours after you go through the anaerobic energy system with your exercise. So it's not the lactic acid, but it's the inflammation that has been caused by the injury to the muscle fibers you created with your workout so that the muscle rebuilds. That's the whole purpose of working out. It is believed or shown by research that it reduces or prevents soreness from future workouts. So finally, let's talk about the benefits of resistance training. It's going to increase performance. It's going to increase the prevention of injuries. Will improve your body composition, since you're going to increase the muscle mass and then lower your body fat, and then your composition will be improved. Self-image, of course, and then more importantly, muscle and bone health. We talked about sarcopenia after 30 and osteoporosis after 55. So those will be prevented, and it prevents chronic diseases. For example, type 2 diabetes, very important topic that we're going to cover in body composition, and it also prevents hypertension. So as a summary, we looked at all of these topics: movement, what the organ systems are, the muscle structure, types of muscle fibers, types of muscle actions, FITT principle to design a strength training program, the exercise and safety topics, injury prevention issues and DOMS, delayed onset of muscle soreness, and the benefits of resistance training. So that's going to conclude my presentation. Thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next chapter.